If you were born between 1976 and 1985, you spent the first 3 decades of your life in a demographic no man's land. Generation X didn't quite claim you, and Millennials definitely didn't want you. Every personality quiz or cultural think piece seemed to describe someone adjacent, but never you. Then in 2014, a writer named Sarah Stankorb published a piece in Good magazine using the term Xennial. For a massive number of people, reading that word provided immediate psychological validation. They finally had a name for the isolation they were feeling. To understand what makes this cohort distinct, we have to look at the extremes of their developmental timeline. You started off in an environment where you had to tolerate genuine, inescapable childhood boredom, and eventually entered an adulthood defined by endless digital scrolling. That early boredom was tactile. It meant staring at the ceiling on a Sunday afternoon, watching the numbers on a microwave clock tick from 2:47 to 2:48, simply because you had no alternative entertainment. Your brain learned to sit with that discomfort and generate its own stimulation. The Xennial experience rarely gets discussed as a serious psychological catalyst of your neurological development is a highly specific, measurable event. Sometime in your early 20s, that entire analog environment evaporated. Society migrated en masse from physical archives and landlines to high-speed digital networks. Between 1995 and 2005, internet adoption exploded from 14 to 68%. Concurrently, NIH research by Jay Geed established the prefrontal cortex develops into our late 20s. Mapping this biological maturation over the tech boom reveals a perfect overlap. The prefrontal cortex is the region of the brain most responsible for assessing risk, building adaptability, and incorporating new information into long-term mental frameworks. Because their brains were quite literally still under construction during this rupture, Xennials were plastic enough to absorb rudimentary digital systems natively, yet old enough to retain the physical, analog logic of their childhoods. They function as transitional hardware. They developed the neuroplasticity to master a fast-paced digital world without losing the structural, grounded logic of the environment that came before it. Highly replicated research by cognitive psychologist Elizabeth Loftus shows that human memory is reconstructive. We don't pull up perfect video files of our past. We reassemble the story each time we remember it, changing the details slightly as we grow. Xennials are the absolute last generation allowed to let their pasts change shape the way human memory evolved to work. Every bad decision at 22 and every awkward phase at 17 eventually faded away, leaving no permanent record. Compare that quiet, private development to the heavily documented coming-of-age experiences of younger cohorts. Growing up alongside a permanent, searchable database of your own social mistakes presents an entirely different set of psychological pressures. But that protected youth quickly gave way to a harsh economic reality. A massive portion of this group entered the workforce between 1997 and 2008, walking directly into the dot-com collapse, the 2008 financial crisis, or in many cases, both. Research by economist Lisa Kahn analyzed graduates entering the workforce during these downturns. Her data proved that starting a career in a recession actively suppresses a person's earnings trajectory for a decade or more. This timing creates an internal weather system that never fully turns off. Even after things stabilize, a quiet anxiety about financial security remains, leaving an entire generation running contingency plans and keeping one eye on the exit. You have an undocumented, untracked childhood, immediately followed by severe economic instability. That exact combination results in a baseline psychology of highly cautious, quiet adaptability. We map this generation using bicultural identity, originally built to study immigrants navigating 2 different cultures. A large-scale review of 83 studies by Nguyen and Benet Martinez found that straddling 2 different realities doesn't create confusion. Instead, it generates profound mental flexibility. If we apply that bicultural lens to time periods instead of geography, we see that Xennials are genuinely bilingual. They understand the distinct expectations, pacing, and logic of both the analog and digital eras. In practice, this means possessing the capacity to turn off a phone and sink into deep, disconnected attention for an afternoon, while also being perfectly capable of picking up a new software interface without reading the tutorial. They sit at a specific inflection point in history. They carry the physical memory and habits of the before while seamlessly operating the machinery of the after. The Xennial mind is defined by the tension of holding two opposing realities at once, and in an increasingly unpredictable world, that exact psychology provides the ultimate blueprint for adaptability.